Dark clouds are lurking over the continent of Africa, and millions of people's lives are being reshaped right before our very eyes. In a world where the dollar has benefited the West for decades, higher interest rates and a lack of dollar availability is now destroying other currencies in real time. Let's talk about this. All right, so it's been a minute since I've done a quick take. Thought I would take a minute to share with you a couple interesting articles that caught my attention and just really highlight the destruction that the Federal Reserve note, aka the dollar, has done not only to citizens in America, but globally, in particular, the continent of Africa. I think sometimes we can forget that while we're living on this side of the world, the news don't really give us the full picture of the debt destruction that's happening worldwide as a result of Jerome Powell and other central banks hiking rates, causing even more distress in people's lives on a daily basis. And the biggest thing is there's currently a wave of devaluations happening across the continent of Africa. The peak of interest rate hike cycles seem to have been reached in global markets, but Africa's underdeveloped economies are still dealing with the story of interest rates staying higher for longer, which used to be a global economic trend, has had a lasting effect on weaker economies. There's been a drop in value over the continent in waves. The Central Bank of Malawi recently announced that the value of the country's currency would drop by an amazing 44%. This brings the total number of countries whose currencies have lost a lot of value to a total number of 4. That's Malawi, Nigeria, Zambia, and Kenya for starters. Most of these markets find it very difficult, or even some impossible, to access international markets to raise dollars, which in turn makes it difficult for them to limit the amount of currency they create. With them not being able to pay the dollar-denominated debts, the shortages in dollars forces nations to devalue sharply. And I mean sharply. This term of rapid currency devaluation I'm talking about is what I call hyper theft. Not only do nations create more monopoly currency to cover their own behinds, but it dilutes their already worthless paper circulating in the economy. Yet there is a bigger problem going on here, which is how to keep the economy stable when credit is getting tighter and foreign exchange access is hard to come by. The primary trouble with developing economies is that through Western debt subjugation, they have been ultimately robbed and left vulnerable to decisions of their former colonizers. With Jerome Powell and company in D.C. sparking a currency crisis by hiking interest rates, while institutions like the IMF come in and provide unpayable loans in dollars. It's the equivalent of giving someone a credit card with a burdensome interest rate to pay off past debts, then at the drop of a dime, hike borrowing costs, making the interest payments impossible to pay back. They never even had a chance to touch the principal payments or original loan, nevertheless newly issued debt. So the total debt compounds even faster. With global interest rates going up and commodity prices going up, made it even clearer how vulnerable countries with fixed exchange rates are. Developing economies are particularly affected by these problems as external imbalances, the risk of capital flight, and debt loads that can't be paid off become more clear. The continent of Africa is clearly in the midst of financial chaos, where Western debtors have deliberately re-enslaved the people, not in chains, but in unpayable debt loads that will force them to have to give up their natural resources and eventually the land itself. And as African currencies fall to all-time lows against the dollar, the continent's economies look more and more unstable. The currencies of countries I mentioned earlier have dropped sharply, which shows that their economies are having deep problems. The falling value of these currencies is more than just a number on a graph. It means less purchasing power to buy things, higher living costs, and more stress on close to 300 million people that are already struggling. These are just the facts from a few countries I'm talking about, but there's a lot of trouble on the way ahead. The dollar-denominated debt cannot be paid in full, just like Uncle Sam can't pay off his debt load to his creditors in his own country and beyond. At the end of the day, what's happening in Africa is a stark reminder of how fragile underdeveloped economies are in a world saturated with too much debt and in currencies that are being weaponized by their issuers. But the one thing remains true. In the end, the Federal Reserve note will be the last currency standing. But the same issues our brothers and sisters in Africa are facing today will touch our shores at some point, and it might be a lot sooner than we think. Just something worth paying attention to. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. If you found this information informative, then definitely give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. Catch you in the next video.